We'll start the meeting at 10:30, just a few more minutes. Just remind people to mute your lines when you're not speaking. Makes everything work better. Thank you. Good morning. This is Mark Pattison. I'll open the March 8th meeting of the New York State Cemetery Board. We are meeting remotely, and I will ask Rob in a minute just to make sure he covers that we've followed the rule, what rules we're operating under to meet remotely. Little twist of fate, even though we advertised this to meet remotely. I was planning on being in the building, but turns out the building's not open to me. So 99 Washington Avenue has got some electrical problems. So fortunately for us, we didn't have to scramble. We had noticed it as a remote meeting. So before I ask Rob just to cover that, I'll introduce myself again. Mark Pattison. I am representing now confirmed Secretary of State Roberto Rodriguez, who has also signed an order reconfirming the fact that I'm his representative in this meeting and acting as chair of the board. Can the other two board members introduce themselves? Tom?
Yes, this is Thomas Fuller, representing Dr. Mary Bassett, Commissioner of Health for the Department of Health.
Yeah, and Jill?
Hi, this is Jill Faber, representing Attorney General Letitia James.
Okay. So again, right before I ask Rob to remind people, since we are meeting remotely, although it's true, we always have had a meeting recorded. Please mute your lines when you're not speaking. There will be an opportunity for the public and applicants to speak. When you are speaking, we appreciate it if you would identify yourself so we can keep good records. You are required to identify yourself under certain rules if you're a registered lobbyist. And so that's, I think, just we've gotten pretty set by now. Rob, can you just cover the regulations that we're meeting under, the open meetings regulations?
Of course, Mark. Thank you. So we are operating pursuant to Chapter 1 of the laws of 2022 and Executive Order 11, which permits public bodies to meet remotely, provided that the public have the ability to view or listen to the proceedings and that the proceedings are recorded and later transcribed.
Great. Thank you. This meeting is being recorded, so just keep that in mind. I think the first order of business is to review the minutes of previous meetings. And I'd like to just ask if anybody has any corrections or suggestions to the minutes. I will note, I think this is true, that the minutes are in a little bit different format. We've tried to just sort of streamline them so that we record actions taken and votes taken, because we do have the recorded meeting as backup to fill in any of the other details. It's just simpler for us, and I think actually a better way to do it. But does anybody have any questions or concerns or changes to the minutes as distributed? There be none.
No, I have none.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the last meeting, which is the February 8th meeting. Is that right? Can that be right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So I make a motion to accept the minutes of the February 8th meeting as distributed. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, 2 seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Our counsel, Rob Vanderbliz, is here. And Rob, do you have any, I know you've mailed out a legislative report. Is there anything to particularly add to that, or anything to add about our abandonment regulations?
Nothing in particular to add to the legislative report. The regulations to help prevent abandonment should appear by notice of adoption in tomorrow's state register, and will be adopted tomorrow.
That's fabulous. Does anybody have any questions about, the board members have any questions about the pending legislation? Okay. I will just again take note, sort of a victory lap. It's kind of been a long slog, but that new regulations are a result of direction from the previous governor to when he vetoed some legislation to see what we could pursue and solve through a regulatory process. And while no one is ever completely happy with all of the results, I want to thank our partners, ISAC and the community and the staff to have gone through that and adopted the regulation. I think they're an improvement, and I think it's a good accomplishment for the board and the division. So just take note of that. We also have our director of the program, Louis Polishuk, here. And Louis, do you have a division report?
Yeah, sorry, I had a little bit of trouble with the WebEx getting on, but which pales in comparison to the trouble we're having in our building, but be that as it may. We are, it's annual report season. Just a reminder, most cemeteries, the ones that are on a fiscal year, their annual reports are due at the end of this month, March 31st. Short extensions are liberally given. You just have to ask. Longer extensions, please give us a reason if you want one. And if you have a good reason, we will, in all likelihood, give you that extension. The other thing I have an update on is staffing. Sadly, we have lost one staff member. Karen DeYoung in our Buffalo office has gone to another agency. On the other hand, we have a new staff member in our Buffalo office, a new investigator, Michael Katina, so welcome. And we are working on filling a bunch more vacancies. Stay tuned. More on that, hopefully soon. It's a challenging environment to be hiring in right now, but we are trying our best to do just that. That is pretty much all I had for this one. I'll just say one more thing about the minutes, which I'll give credit to Alicia, I think, for the idea. We have traditionally done minutes that I think go farther than you actually have to do, so that we have sufficient information. If somebody later has to look for something, we can go back to look at the minutes and figure out what the board did and why. However, we have these recordings of all of our meetings now. So what I did is I went in and put the times where the discussion occurs. So if there's ever a question down the road that the public have, that we have, that anyone has, you will know exactly where to queue up the video to and can get whatever detail you want and do not have to rely on our imperfect transcription thereof. So just letting you know that that's what we did. Seems like everyone was happy with it. That's what we will be doing going forward. I'll defer to Alicia on the, no, I'll defer to Alicia on any annual report statistics if we have any yet. I know it's early in the year, and vandalism report.
Let me just ask if any board members have any questions of Lewis's report so far? Okay.
No questions.
Thank you.
No questions.
Thank you, Lewis. We have Alicia Young, who's our assistant director here to fill us in on the vandalism fund. Alicia?
Well, I'm going to break your hearts, but due to circumstances with the building and all, I do not have a vandalism report today. I apologize. I will be finishing that up and posting it to our website this week, so you can go there for all the details. I can say that not much has changed since the prior month except for collections. This is a annual report season, so vandalism and assessment payments are coming in fast and furiously, as well as the annual reports. I'm happy to report that the online form seems to be embraced by a lot of people. It seems like we're getting good participation on that front. That's all I've got today.
Thank you, Alicia. And again, I'd encourage people to use the online form. It cuts down on errors and saves us a considerable amount of staff work. So we have, anybody have any questions for Alicia on her vandalism report or non-report? Anyway,
No
okay,
questions.
so we have several applications, one application for a vandalism for a dangerous monument application. It is in the form from Restated Village Cemetery. I don't know if I said that right. In Broome County, in the amount of $21,773.07. Can someone present that application to the board?
Brandon?
This is Brendan Stanton with the division. Received an application from Wild Village Cemetery for the restoration of 21 dangerous monuments. I visited the cemetery. I noted that they did appear dangerous. This is their fourth application, and they anticipate the final one. Pretty extensive job rehabilitating that cemetery. The cemetery did not have records available to contact lot owners directly, but based on the most recent burial I identified, which occurred in 1916, it's unlikely there would have been any response. And as a result of this information, I have recommended in favor of approval in the amount of the lower estimate plus the legal notice, which is $21,773.07.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Brendan or on this application? Rob, did you have anything to add to this application?
Thank you, Mark. Only if the board does approve the application that the approval be subject to the availability of funds.
Okay. All right. So if board members have no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve the application of Lyle Village Cemetery in Broome County in the amount of $21,773.07, subject to the availability of funds. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor? Aye.
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 Application is approved. We have a number of other applications before us. We'll go through them in the order they are on the agenda, unless somebody suggests otherwise. The first is Forest Lawn Cemetery and Griffin Mills Cemetery. Is a merger application. We've been working through a number of these since the law was passed. Does somebody want to present that to the board?
Yeah, that'll be me. So this is another merger of Forest Lawn merging with a cemetery to its in its general area, but not really a bit farther out than the cemeteries that had previously merged with like 10 years ago, but still in the same greater Buffalo area. There's nothing really exceptional about this one. It's a 5-acre cemetery in the town of Aurora. About 2 acres remain unsold. The closest existing component of the Forest Lawn group is Lancaster, is not Lancaster Rural, it's, sorry, it's, that's also almost as close. Lakeside Cemetery in Hamburg is the closest existing piece. Lancaster Rural, the board previously recommended approval of that merger, is also close by. This fits into the model that Forest Lawn's promoting of a cluster of cemeteries in an area where they can provide services. Griffin's Mills is sort of been managing to keep functioning, but it doesn't really have the ability to recruit new board members going forward to ensure its long-term survival as as an independent cemetery, and it's been financially, I would say, probably marginal in terms of profitability. There is a certain amount of money. There is money available in its permanent maintenance fund that will benefit Forest Lawn. There's not, beyond that, there's really nothing outstanding about that. There's a little bit of a wrinkle with their bylaws. It was unclear whether their quorum had been met for their board. We clarified that with their attorney. That all seems to be okay. We're recommending, at this point, we're recommending approval there's, at the very end of the packet, there are 2 certificates of merger in the packet. The one at the very end of the packet is a revised version that they made after consulting with counsel and me. And we think that's now in a position to be approved. So we're recommending that the board go ahead and approve that certificate of the form of that certificate of merger. We're also recommending that the board recommend approval. That approval is going to be subject to all required other required approvals, which will be AG and/or court and Erie County Legislature. And that was all I had on that one. If anyone has, Rob, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from a legal perspective, or Mark, I don't know if you want to take non-legal questions first.
No, Rob, you do have any additions to the discussion?
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Lewis. Just to reiterate the issues that council has raised with the plan of merger in this batch of mergers that Forest Lawn has been pursuing. The plan of merger needs to set forth the number of members, and the plan does not. The plan of merger needs to set forth any changes to the articles of incorporation. The plan does not. Those 2 issues have been addressed in the revised certificate of merger that I've worked with counsel to Forest Lawn, and that I have also followed up with counsel to Griffin's Mills to ensure that those changes are acceptable to Griffin's Mills as well. And as Lewis said, my understanding is that the cemeteries have not secured the approval of the Erie County Legislature as required by subdivision C of section 1506 of the not-for-profit corporation law. So if the board is recommending approval of the merger, I would recommend that recommendation be subject to the approval of the Erie County Legislature.
Okay, so just remind me, Rob, there are 2 resolutions, is that right?
That is correct.
One is to approve the plan of merger, is to recommend the plan of a merger, subject to the getting all of the local or other approvals. And then we will vote on the to approve the certificate of merger. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'll do those separately. Does anybody have any questions, Tom or Jill? Do you have any questions of this application?
No.
Okay. And
No, not here.
again, our goal, overarching goal here is to maintain cemeteries operated by cemeteries, keep them sustainable and not abandoned to towns. Merger is one of the tools in our toolbox, and it's available to us in this one. So I will make a motion to approve, to recommend the plan of merger as presented, subject to the applicants getting all of the necessary state, local, and other approvals. Is that sufficient, Rob?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jill. All in favor? Aye.
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 The merger is recommended. We also have, I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of merger for this cemetery. And I think that's sufficient, Rob, just that. So do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. The
Aye.
certificate of merger is also approved. Okay, thank you. And thank you to both Forest Lawn and Griffith Mills for working through these issues for this. Next application is Huntington Rural Cemetery. It's a land purchase. Can someone present that application to the board?
I'm going to start on this, and Carrie McGovern or Vince Giamato can jump in if they feel like I've missed anything important. In 2008, Huntington Rural Cemetery sold a parcel of land to an adjoining volunteer fire department for $500,000. They now want to buy it back for the same price. The main motivation for the transaction, although the land will benefit the cemetery, the main motivation for the transaction is for local zoning reasons. It will allow them to add an access road that they otherwise would need to go through a very expensive approval process to get. Although getting the land back will be a benefit for them to add graves as well. That's sort of a bit of a secondary concern. The only wrinkle we had with this, and I think this may not, because we got some late information on this, our write-up may not spell this out as clearly as it could have. The cemetery, initially got two appraisals last year, and they valued the parcel at $440,000 and $450,000. That sounds to me to be very low for that area. Apparently, it's on a busy road, and it's not really suitable for being owned by anyone other than the fire department or the cemetery. Nobody else is really going to be able to make use of it. That said, the cemetery got its appraisals updated, and the two updated appraisals give an appraised value of $500,000, which is in fact the purchase price. Initially, we were going to recommend capping the approval at the appraised value. That's no longer an issue. The appraised value, with the improvement in the market that's occurred in the last 9 months, is now equal to the sales price. And we're recommending just a clean approval of it, and we believe that the cemetery has adequately established that it is not paying more than fair market value for the property.
And how are they?
Sorry?
How are they financing the
general fund? I should have added that Huntington Rural Cemetery is generally a well-run cemetery, well-maintained, financially sound.
And is there anybody else wishing to add to the presentation?
I know counsel for the cemetery is also on. Sorry, Carrie.
It's okay.
All right, Rob, did you have anything to add to this application?
I do. Thank you, Mark. Huntington is located in Suffolk County.
Right.
Division C of Section 1506 requires that the Suffolk County Legislature approve this. So if the cemetery board is going to approve the purchase of real property, I would recommend that approval be made subject to approval of the Suffolk County Legislature as well.
Right, that's right. I should have mentioned that. Sorry.
Do any board members have any questions of the staff on this application?
Yes, Louis, just curious, what did the fire department use this property for the last 15 years?
If I understand it correctly, they didn't really use it for much of anything. Carrie, maybe you can answer this. I think they were planning on expanding or relocating, and they never did.
I'm not 100% sure. This is Carrie McGovern with the division, but perhaps Robert Hughes, who I believe is also on the call, might elaborate on that.
Yes, this is Robert Hughes. I'm the president of the board of Huntington Rural Cemetery. I was not on the board at the time, but my understanding is the fire district intended to build a substation on this property. They are located north of Huntington Village Business District with their firehouse, and they wanted a substation on the south end of the district for quicker response time. But I understand there was a change in commissioners at the fire district, and they decided not to pursue those plans. So really, they've done nothing with the land since they've owned it for the last 14 years. It's just sat vacant.
There's no reason to be concerned they dumped anything there or created any problems that the cemetery would now have to clean up, if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, no, there's nothing like that occurred.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Because we have seen that concern before.
All right. Okay, so if there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the land purchase for Huntington Rural Cemetery, subject to approval by the Suffolk County Legislature and any other state or local permits that need to be required. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jill. Any other discussion? That is sufficient, Rob? Sufficient motion?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion is carried. Thank you. And thank you, Council, Mr. Hughes, for helping out. We have an application from D. Tonkin Crematory, a retort replacement.
Mike, you want to do this one?
I will. D. Tonkin Crematory is a standalone crematory in the town of Tonawanda, Erie County. They're requesting approval for a major alteration to replace an existing 1991 cremator with a new facultative FT3 SE cremation unit. It's kind of a state-of-the-art unit. They had applied in 2019 for, they had a similar application in 2019, and at that time, the division recommended against approval because the cremation rate in Western New York had stayed pretty steady, and D. Tonkin's numbers had actually decreased over the previous several years. And at that time, they were requesting to replace a non-functioning unit, and that would have dramatically increased their capacity. And we had thought at that time that it would really affect the other cemeteries in Western New York. So their new application corrected some of the issues that were going on there. We've seen that they've had an increase, a 51% increase at D. Tonkin over the past several years. We also see that the cremation rate in Erie County is steadily increased. And basically, like I said, this application is not adding substantial capacity by actually adding a third unit. It's just replacing a unit that's in use now. The total cost of this is estimated to be $304,000. They have a dedicated fund, general fund, to pay for that. And the division has recommended approval.
Mike, as I understand it, it's also the old retort will no longer meet DEC regulations or at some point soon. Is that correct?
Yeah, they've had discussions with the DEC. I'm not specifically sure if this 1991 unit cannot be retrofitted, but it just seems like the cost to do that just does not make sense.
I was just,
Right.
thank you. I was just raising the fact that the DEC regulations will require replacement of cemeteries or modifications at some point. So
In this case, I think in theory, they could bring this retort into compliance. My understanding is that any retort purchased in or after 1990 is able to be brought into compliance. But whereas older ones might very well not be, has to do with their ability to their monitoring capacity, if I remember right. But in this case, DEC really wants them to replace this one, even though it could be retrofitted.
Okay, so does anybody have any additional, or Rob, do you have anything on this application?
Thank you, Mark. No comments from council.
So
Mike, I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. I don't know if you guys have noticed, there's guys standing outside my window shouting. But did you discuss the grandfathering issue?
In the 2019 application, we determined or found out that they had 3 funeral directors on the board. And we've got a statement from them that 2 of those funeral directors are no longer either practicing or on the board. And the one funeral director that is still on the board does not work to the general public. They work at University of Buffalo. And we do not see that as a conflict.
Well, also the crematory was previously a grandfathered standalone. The Associated Funeral Home, Kenmore Mortuary Services, is no more. It closed in, I believe, 2014. 2015, something like that.
thank you. Do the board members have any questions of this application? Any questions? So I'll make a motion to approve the application of the Tonkin Crematory for a retort replacement. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Application is approved. Next application is Mount Olivet Cemetery. You want to take that now, Louis? Notice of proposed.
There's not, so just we can give the background in public, but we need to discuss it in non-public session. The background is that we, on April 13th, proposed to impose a penalty. We've now calculated that penalty. It wasn't calculable at the time we imposed it because part of it was a fine of $100 a day for not complying with one of our orders. The total amount in question is $10,700. The cemetery is seeking that we either waive or reduce that penalty. I circulated a memo to the board with one suggestion. I actually, after late last night, had some other thoughts as to things that might be relevant to our discussion, but this is all in the nature of either settlement discussions or the pending investigation. And Rob, I don't know whether that's executive session or non-public session. We're not subject to the public open meetings law, but either way, I want to have the discussion in public.
The board could move into executive session pursuant to paragraph F of subdivision 1 of section 105 of the Public Officers Law to discuss matters leading to the discipline of a corporation. That corporation, of course, being Mount Olivet Cemetery.
You're not suggesting we do that now, Louis? You do that?
No, at the end of our regular agenda. But that's going to be an executive session, which means we're going to adjourn, come out of executive. We're going to go into executive session, come out of executive session, not adjourn first.
Right. Okay. Is there any other thing to talk about before we move to the next?
All of that, not really.
Okay. So we'll go into executive session after the rest of our agenda and come back out with potentially some action taken. We next have a restated certificate of incorporation from Esperance Cemetery. Is somebody going to present that to the board?
Rob, I think this is all you.
Thank you. So my understanding is that Esperance Cemetery originally filed their certificate several centuries ago and in a county office in Schoharie. The original was lost in a flood. So Esperance Cemetery is seeking to file a restated certificate of incorporation with the Department of State. And Pursuant to subdivision E of section 404 of the Not-for-Profit Corporation Law and section 1505, the cemetery board needs to approve this restated certificate of incorporation. I've worked with counsel for the cemetery. Counsel for the cemetery has also, gone through several iterations of this restated certificate of incorporation. For the cemetery board's purposes, the restated certificate of incorporation does include those elements required for a public cemetery. They state the municipalities and the county in which it's located and the time of the annual meeting. So I would recommend that the board approve the restated certificate of incorporation. The next step for the cemetery would be to file it with the Division of Corporations, in which we hope that they will be successful.
Okay, does any board members have any questions in this regard? There being none, I'll make a motion that the board approve the restated certificate of incorporation for Esperance Cemetery. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Application is approved. Next is Lancaster Rural Cemetery, certificate of merger. I think this is our background. These are things that we deferred previously, and they've worked to cure our concerns. But can someone present that to the board?
Rob, do you want to explain this one, or do you want me to?
I'm happy to relay that. I can do it, Louis, if that's all right. So again, we've worked with the division, and I have worked with council and NYSAC, working with the cemeteries to revise the original certificate of merger. So there was a certificate of merger in the board packet for Lancaster, merging with Buffalo City Cemetery in November. Since then, the certificate of merger has been revised to reflect the number of members of the corporation, both corporations, along with amendments necessary to the certificate of incorporation. So I've confirmed with council to Buffalo City Cemetery and to Lancaster that the proposed revisions to this new certificate of merger are suitable to both their clients. And so I would recommend that the board approve this revised certificate of merger. From there, my understanding is that the cemeteries will proceed through Supreme Court to notify Supreme Court of this revised certificate of merger.
Okay, just a reminder to people to mute yourself if you're not speaking, not mute your device. Is there any questions from the board members on this revised certificate of merger application? There being none, I'll make a motion that we approve the revised certificate of merger for Lancaster Rural Cemetery. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. I think we have a similar application from Attica Cemetery, which is a cemetery merger that was part of a previous application. And Rob, would you like to present that one as well?
Certainly. So in this instance, the cemetery board recommended approval of the merger in February, but held off on approving the certificate of merger. Again, I've worked with counsel to both cemeteries and confirmed with counsel to both cemeteries that this certificate of merger is suitable to their clients, and I would recommend that the board approve the certificate of merger.
Okay. Are there any other questions of Rob from the board members? There being none, I'll make a motion that the board approve the application of or the certificate of merger for Attica Cemetery. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion application is the certificate of merger is approved. And again, we have an application from Quaker Settlement Cemetery, certificate of merger, again, similar circumstances, previous application. Rob, do you want to just quick give us the thumbnail?
Of course. Thank you, Mark. Again, this is a revised certificate from what was in the packet presented to the board in February. I've worked with counsel to both cemeteries to confirm that the revisions are suitable to their clients, and I recommend that the board approve the certificate of merger.
Okay. If there are no other questions of Rob on this matter, I will make a motion to approve the certificate of merger for Quaker Settlement Cemetery. And again, I think this is with Buffalo City. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That concludes our, well, it doesn't conclude, it conclude all of the topics. The next step is for us to go to executive session to discuss Mount Olivet. I'll ask that motion in a minute, but we would like to entertain any comment from the public on matters that were before the cemetery or any other matters that might become before us. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to the board?
There being no one else, David Fleming from the New York State Association of Cemeteries. I just want to thank the board and council for working with the association on the abandonment regs. It was not our desire that we'd have to go down this road, obviously. We received a veto from the previous governor, and this was the direction that we had to follow. And I think the result is good and certainly helps, from our perspective, a notification requirement to the local municipalities to give them some time to work with these struggling cemeteries. And, you know, if those options failed, or we have, as the chairman stated, we have other tools in our toolbox available to our cemeteries. And again, and, you know, echoing the chairman's comments at the beginning of the meeting, you know, NYSAC's position has always been that cemeteries are best run by cemeteries. So, you know, we hope that this will be an important tool to continue cemetery operations in New York with struggling cemeteries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else wishing to speak to the board at this time? Okay, so the next cemetery board meeting is scheduled for April 12th. And that is before the ability to meet remotely expires. We don't know if it'll continue or not. We'll make a decision about whether that meeting will be remote or not. And even if we do notice it as remote, we may actually have sufficient people in the building to
Mark, our expectation is that we would notice the meeting as remote, but in fact, at least you and me and Tom meet in person.
Okay. We will have options as long as that option is still available. So I'll make a motion that we go into the board go into executive session to discuss settlement conversations with Mount Olivet Cemetery.
Mark, if the motion could be to discuss matters leading to the discipline of Mount Olivet Corporation.
I will make a motion that we go to executive session to discuss matters of discipline for around Mount Olivet Cemetery. We are not adjourning the meeting. We will come back out of executive session and announce whether or not any actions were taken before we adjourn the meeting. Note to board members, I think you just got a notice, or there's a separate link for the executive session. So to our operators here, people can stay online if they'd like and wait for us to come out or not. That's up to you.
Yeah, John Furtado, please stay on the line to keep this meeting open.
Yeah.
Will do.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So thank you. And then we will be returned shortly.
I'll open the executive session right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Board members, feel free to take two if you need to. Thank you. Thank you all for, if you're not staying on, for joining us. Oops.
like we're still waiting on. Looks like we're still waiting on Jill.
And Rob, right?
Let me call up my write-up.
I can hear you guys, by the way.
There's Jill.
Oh, David, I was about to call you, but you're here, so I don't need to call you. All right, just waiting for Jill to come back. And when she's here, we will have something to report.
So Lewis, what's going on outside your window there?
I don't really know, but there are guys kind of shouting outside the window.
You don't know.
Are you in your office or at home?
In the office. There's this like parapet you can walk along right outside the window. Is gang all here yet? No, we still don't have Jill. Let me call her.
No, she'll get there.
No, I had a little. It was a little funky for me trying to get back in.
Okay, so Jill's on.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we are reconvening in public session. We had a discussion in executive session about the penalties in regard to Mount Olivet Cemetery. And the board voted in executive session to direct the division and the council to work with, to convey a settlement offer to Mount Olivet that does a couple things, deals with board composition and training, deals with future reports, follow up on future reports from various, like the auditors and others, and that if accepted and implemented, then we would substantially reduce the penalty, and that penalty would be paid not to the state, but to the cemetery's permanent maintenance fund. Did I include everything in there, Rob?
I believe the further reports would address internal controls and recovery from insurance proceeds.
Yes, thank you. I don't think we need to take a vote again. That's just a report out of the action the board took. The board took that action in order to make sure that it's clear that when that boards have responsibilities, oversight responsibilities, they need to take seriously. So we're hoping that some new board members' training and compliance with other advisors will be helpful there. Is there other board members want to add anything to that? Okay, I think that concludes our meeting. And I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting of the New York State Cemetery Board. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, and thank you all for attending. Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
thank you.
Thank you.